Welcome to a special edition of the CEC Report. Today we are making history on the CEC Report because we are having a live international internet link to Egypt where we'll be interviewing a special guest, Doctor Ashraf Sabri. Welcome, Dr. Sabri.
Good morning.
So it's morning in Egypt and it's evening over here in Melbourne. Now, Doctor, the reason we're having a discussion today, and this whole episode of the CEC Report will be on our interview with Dr. Sabri, is because Dr. Sabri met the CEC when he was visiting Australia on Anzac Day, or around Anzac Day. And at the time, the CEC put out a press release about Anzac Day that regular viewers would know we spoke about and probably read, and it was called "The Anzac Legend: Will Australians Finally Learn Their True History?" And the content of that press release was to make some obvious points that got lost in the whole glorifying of Anzac, disconnected from the reality of what happened there, which is that this was an imperial war in Europe, and Australia acted in that imperial war entirely as a colony of an imperial power, Great Britain. We sacrificed a huge amount. 60,000 Australian men died in that war, which out of our small population was stunning. And it was a national tragedy. But it's not. It doesn't get. In recent years, it's been turned into something else as an object as a defining moment in our history that somehow made us, when it's far from the truth. It was a defining moment in our history, of course, but it's something we should learn from, and it should motivate us as Australians to want to be truly independent and sovereign and not to go through that kind of experience again. So we put that material in our release, and the best thing viewers can do is go and read it on our website again from April 23rd. And that's how we met Dr. Sabri, because he was visiting Australia, and I'll just give you his CV. Dr. Sabri is actually a medical doctor who's worked in Egypt, the United Kingdom and France, and he's now back in Egypt. But he's also a military historian, and he's done an enormous amount of research into the history of Egypt in the same period that we're talking about, around World War I. And he's produced a book called The Great War, Egypt, Australia and New Zealand. And he was over in Australia sharing his research from this book, and there was a lot of compatibility with what he's researched and what the CEC talked about in our press release. So we finally got to meet Dr. Sabri, and that has resulted in us arranging to have an interview here so that Australian viewers can hear what he has to say from his research on this subject. So let's now talk about that, Doctor, because I think your insights are going to be quite valuable. What I'd like you to just, in general, start on is what you were able to discover about Egypt's experiences in World War I and how that intersected Australia and New Zealand.
Sure. Actually, the First World War is, everybody knows that it's the Great War, and the main reason it's a war for civilization. But we started the war as England. It was exactly Egypt engaged in the war on the 5th of August 1914. And they started to collect a huge army to prepare the land because the land of Egypt was more than 10 armies of the world has to come to our land to start this war, or to start defending Egypt, going through Palestine to conquer the great enemy was attacking us from there. On the other side, in Europe, there was also a big war happening there. So it starts really two areas, in the Middle East area and in European area.
So you just to clarify, you were a base. Egypt was a base of operations for both fronts of the war.
Yes. So we have to prepare 1,200,000 soldiers for these Egyptian soldiers for this war.
Was Egypt a colony at the time? Was Egypt a colony of Great Britain?
yes, there was occupation of the Great Britain, but it's not the same. It was a protectorate. It was under the protection of England. It was not like in India, for example, which is a complete occupation. So this means that we have our own flag, we have our own government, we have our own army, but it's just having to protect it by Great Britain, especially to protect Suez Canal. And this was the main target of attacking Egypt, the Suez Canal. And the biggest war was on Suez Canal. And when ANZAC arrived, Australia and New Zealand, by the way, the name of ANZAC has been stuck or been created in Shepherd Hotel, which was the main military commander office.
All right.
The two armies arrived on 1915, and they started to say, okay, they're going to be Australian, New Zealand Army Corps. And they said, okay, well, let's call it ANZAC. So the ANZAC name is really created in Egypt.
It's an Egyptian.
And the training and the great welcome have been done, especially to Australia and New Zealand, with a big proof that we give them the best piece of land of Egypt as a camp, which is the area of pyramids and Maadi for training, and their hospital, it was in Heliopolis. And Heliopolis in the old ancient time also, it was one of the capitals of Egypt. It was very, very important and very precious to the Egyptian. And this show how the Egyptian feel toward, at the beginning, at the just welcome, how the Egyptian feel toward the Australian, New Zealand. But with the starting the war, the first line of defense was Suez Canal, and it was on our left-hand side, because along Suez Canal, in an area called Tosun, there was Egyptian army, and 8 to 12 kilometers for the left hand on the Suez Canal, there is an area called Firdan area, where there was Australian New Zealand army. And on the right-hand side, about 10 kilometers, the area called Serabium, there was the Indian army. So, but we were very close and hand in hand with the Australian. And that's why I felt there should be a great cooperation happen in the past, and this cooperation shouldn't stop today. And the defending of Suez Canal was depending on these armies, and then the miracle of crossing Suez Canal is starting the war to change from defending to attack. Crossing Suez Canal was another story. A great cooperation happened between the Egyptian and the Australian, and you can see even in the book a miracle that the Egyptian carrying tens of field hospitals. Each hospital is 100-meter length by 45 meters width, and they thousands of Egyptians carrying it, crossing with this hospital sign. This is a field hospital of the Australians. So crossing behind the Australians, field hospital moving it every 100 meter until they reach the other side. So you can imagine the effort and how they help, and the creating roads and railroad station, railroad along this desert, the hundreds of distance, dying together, fighting together. Even I found also there is a proof of documentary photos in Gallipoli. If you see in the book, if there is a photos in Gallipoli, there is the Egyptian Labor Corps digging graves for the Australian soldiers lost their life in this area. Of course, we know how it was, and there is no need to go through it. It was a really big disaster. But the question, if some of, because it's the same field, the same under fire area, when Australian died, the Egyptian digging graves. But who's digging the graves for the Egyptian if they die? Of course, the Australians. So we lost life together. Our blood mixed together. Not only in Palestine, Syria, and Damascus, and in Iraq, and all these areas during the war, but also in France, in Belgium, in Italy, in Greece, in Malta. Doesn't this deserve that these two countries fought together in 100 years ago, and sacrificed many things. You know, if Egypt, we have 1,200,000, there's 600,000 casualties between deaths and casualties. And this is a huge number for the Egyptian at that time, 14 million at that time,
Yeah.
as a population. So we lost many lives. We sacrificed many things, and it's just to give you an idea, because it was for me like a funny discovery that Australian brought like 22,000 horses and 8,000 mules, and that we have to feed them. And we have the Australian, they wrote, oh, we have to feed our horses only the maize of Egyptians, and it was not that good like in Australia, food in Australia. Yes, but how many kilos and tons of this that I found when I make a calculation how the horse has to feed like 10 kilograms a day, or this we have to feed like 60,000 hectare of land in the 3 years for only animals of one army. So you can imagine we have like more than 10 armies in our land, and the armies themselves. It's sacrifice on the Egyptian and on the life of the Egyptian and the food of the Egyptian. And this is what's happening in the past.
Doctor, is there a general knowledge of this in this unique relationship with Australia among Egyptians, or is it something that you dug up in your research?
Yes, actually, it was unknown. I have to dig in the British National Archive. I have to dig in the informations and documents of the Institut du Monde Arabe in Paris, in France, and also Archive in France, in Italy. I have to dig everywhere to get documentary films, to get documents written by officers, soldiers, generals of the war. And it was really, for me, a big shock of discovery. And I have to go and visit the graves of the Egyptian soldiers, Australian soldiers in all Europe, which also was another shock. I just discovered this, and I was surprised why nobody knows. And even when I brought this back to Egypt, it was like a discovery. Why nobody talk about this? And it took like 15 years of work to collect a lot of information.
Well, Doctor, let's take a break now. When we come back, we're going to talk about how this should be the basis of a modern collaboration between our two countries. Welcome back to the CEC Report, the special edition where we are talking live in Egypt with Dr. Ashraf Sabri, who is an expert on the history of Egypt and Australia the shared history of Australia and Egypt in World War I. So we just spoke about that before the break, and Dr. Sabri made the profound point that the relationship between Egypt and Australia during World War I, when the ANZACs and New Zealand, I should include, when the ANZAC soldiers were based in Egypt, was it got so intimate that. And there was such a shared experience and shared casualties, and the Egyptians lost 600,000 soldiers in that war. We lost, out of 14 million people, we lost 60,000 soldiers out of 5 million people. And we really did, it was a bond born in blood, which unfortunately no one remembers. And Dr. Sabri had to dig that up himself. And Australians deserve to know about this as well, because, and if I dare sound slightly controversial, in Australia we tend to have an Anglo-Saxon view of world history, and that's it, right? So this deserves to be known. But let's now move to the present, because we have to acknowledge that we do have this shared history, and therefore countries like Australia and Egypt should be very close. But unfortunately right now, Australians, in my view, have a distorted view of Egypt, and it's distorted by recent the events of recent years, such as the Arab Spring, which was reported in a certain way that made everyone in Australia very excited about it, and then there was a negative reporting of the backlash to the Arab Spring, and that negative reporting extended into the soap opera around an Australian journalist named Peter Gresti, who was incarcerated there for 400 days. And of course, it provided a lot of negative reporting of Egypt in general and a negative impression of Egypt in general. And I personally have had to answer people's queries about this when we've spoken about Egypt. What about them? What about that incident? What about that incident? So let's talk to an actual Egyptian of his views of it, so for the benefit of Australians. So what was the Arab Spring really like for Egyptians, Doctor, when they experienced the rise to power of the Muslim Brotherhood?
I will tell you, as an Egyptian and a doctor who share in the two revolutions, I was lucky enough, or not lucky, but I don't think it's a spring. As you can say, it's a winter, winter time, or storming of the Arab quietness. But actually, why I was in the first revolution as an Egyptian, I have to help. The Egyptian people went to the street, and we want to change, and we don't want someone stay on in the country for 40 years. Corruption, we are not happy, and I don't think anybody happy in his own country even, but it was like this in Egypt. We look for a change, and really the change was a disaster. And for the first time, I felt like I created a hospital on the 25th of January, and I was happy for the revolution. Of course, I have seen that there was a big attack on the police station, the army, the police officer, killing, and it was like planned in one day, and it was not a revolution style, like yes, things can happen in one area, but never in the whole villages, whole cities, whole police stations in exactly the same time. It seems like planned, and all of a sudden Egyptians start to wake up. There is something wrong happened here. We've been cheated, and all of a sudden we found that the Muslim brothers start to appear in the image, and they are very well known with their cheaty way, lying all the time. We will never be in the parliament, and they took over the whole parliament. We will never be in the presidential, and they became president. And things starting to all the criminals came out of prison. All the criminals of terrorists brought from Afghanistan to Sinai, like an open channel for them to camp in Sinai, giving them weapons, giving them, like, building another terrorist army uh, to, to, to really eradicate our basic army. In this case, the Egyptians start to look at reality.
Yeah.
The reality was there will be no Egyptian, there will be only Muslim brothers. Other will be treated like what we see in Iraq and Syria. But the good thing that Egyptian can see, we are 90 millions, and we have seen all together. I'm telling you, really, it was for me like a shock also that no, we have to help our army. Now we are in a deep problems, and our country going backward very fast, going to the past by the name of religion, going to and start to having bombs and killing and things it never happened in Egypt before. We are peaceful country. We love peace, and we don't like this. And then we stick to our army. We said our army is the main protector to us. So we've been really, I'm telling you, because I was also in the second revolution in the 30th of June. I had a hospital in Alexandria. Probably you heard about this guy dropped from a high building. It was the whole news talking about it. He was working with me in the field hospital, and I used to see in the field hospital of the second revolution against the Muslim brothers, they used to attack the Egyptians with firing guns and killing, like, in the streets. And there was, we have to be an authority. Either we kill the whole Egyptian. They can't kill 90 million person.
Yeah.
If you talk about like 200,000 Muslim brothers, they want to take over with the force, and we will be in the authority, and you have to follow us. You can't really conquer 90 million that easy. So really we stand, we ask this man to help us, because we are falling, the country is falling down. And really there was a good, the only association, organization which just stand without being corrupted is the army, because the whole organizations start to fall apart, ministers and everything.
And
And it was the second revolution. We asked Sisi, take us, help us, and really like begging him
yeah,
to help the Egypt.
and that's
And there was, I will tell you, I was one of them. There was 33 million Egyptians in the street asking Sisi to help Egypt against the terror of Muslim brothers. Nobody can deny this. I've seen it with my eyes. I've been in the street myself, creating. I have even filmed documentary films, because usually I film casualties when they come to the field hospital, during treatment and after treatment. So I really exposed this on one of the television show in here in Egypt. But I have seen in one day 300 casualties with gunshot. It's only one field hospital. What kind of people is this? And we cannot. I mean, we don't need a proof now, because we see terrors even happen in Australia.
yeah,
They
yeah.
have mind of one way. Either this religion, we kill everybody, and everybody's not religion has to die, and we have to kill him, and they kill in cold blood. And this is what we don't want in Egypt. We want to help our country. We want to take our country forward. And now you can see we are working. We are working hard. It might
Well,
take one generation.
But well, Doctor, let's take a break, and we'll talk about that after the break. Welcome back to this special edition of the CEC Report. And before the break, Dr. Sabri, you were talking about how the 90 million strong population of Egypt virtually begged al-Sisi, who is now the president, to rescue Egypt from this disaster that had happened under the Muslim Brotherhood. So what I'd like you to talk about now, though, is you also said that now Egypt wants to build and go forward, and that has started. And you have, as an Egyptian, tell us about, in particular, the project of the second Suez Canal and what that's like as a transformative project, and then any other observations you have about the economy.
I will tell you also, as an Egyptian, I love to share my country, what's happening. Either when the opening of new Suez Canal, it gave us all a hope, and our president said we build it with the money of the Egyptians, and we need 60 billion dollar to start with this. And really, you find once the banks are open, millions of Egyptians, they got their money, they put it here. We want to build our country. It's just like give you an image that if the Egyptian took the money and put it in a project, we believe in this man. We believe in our future. Of course, I'm not a rich man, like I can put a millions, but I said I have to do something also. So I run there the second day, and I asked them, I have to put a field hospital to help 25,000 Egyptian workers digging the canal in case of casualties. And I put a field hospital, and a lot of Egyptian also the same day I found what do you need? I need a cotton, and I need things to help in casualties. I need straps, I need gauze, I need so many things as a small hospital. And I found people, everyone buy things, and things happened that I found one of the biggest field hospital in Ferdan area. I was taking, this is the Ferdan area where I put my field hospital, where was the Australian army
okay.
in the 100 years ago I told you about. And this field hospital helped so many. So this means that we start to rebuild our country again. And that's why when I was in Australia, I was telling the Australian people that we start to rebuild our country. We've been together fighting the terror 100 years ago. Terror still exists till today. We need to support each other. Terror is not far from Australia. Terror is not far from anywhere, anyone around the world. We need to reunite to fight these horrible things going to attack the world. And we need to help each other. Egypt is still weak, not weak by the mean of army or people. No, I mean our economy. We need support to our economy to stand up on feet. We have done what we can do, but with big country like Australia, with very good qualification, very well qualified in education, in nursing, in doctors, in I mean, a lot of in agriculture, all this experience, we need this kind of cooperation which might support the country, because if you have a really good economy, you can build a strong defense against the terror, because you need this kind of support. And that's why I was telling that the when I was in Australia, there was I met members of the parliament. I met the assistant of Minister of Veterans, and really, I have good thing that most of them they ask, do we have attention to the opening of Suez Canal? When I came here, I presented this report, and I gave the name for the invitation, and the presidential office they said, of course we will invite the Australians to the opening of Suez Canal. And this was a great hope for me, and really as an Egyptian, and I will be very happy to see the Prime Minister of Australia, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Minister of Veterans, and members of Parliament attending the opening of Suez Canal. And at the same time, I wish, as an Egyptian, that Australia will invite our president to visit Australia one day, and he will be the first president whatsoever visited the land of Australia, the land of the people who came to Egypt 100 years ago to fight together hand in hand against terror, and today we are fighting hand in hand against terror. I think this kind of visits between the two countries will create a big bond between us.
Well, Dr. Sabri, thank you very much for that. On that note, I agree. I think Australia should attend the opening of the second Suez Canal, and we should reciprocate. You've been a wonderful ambassador for your country and for a relationship between Australia and Egypt based on economic development, which fits in with our message that development is the basis for peace. So thanks for joining us today on the CEC Report, and we'll talk to you more in the future.
Thank you very much.